This is the Nissan Qashqai e-Power. It's just been facelifted and updated, and it's a very intriguing option. It runs as an EV, but you have to put petrol in it. So is it worth considering compared to some of the mainstream hybrid rivals, the best alternatives of which I will call out in this review? Well, stick around and you'll find out, plus a lot of other stuff you need to know about it. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell, and let's get to it. This time around, there are two different versions of the e-Power available in Australia. Initially, there was just one, and it was called the TI. Now, the entry-level version has been renamed to be the TIL, and it's still around $52,000, which is not cheap, and it's still $4,200 more than the most expensive petrol version. So you are just paying for engine, but you do get a few extra specs. But let's talk about more generally what you are getting as standard in the TIL version of the e-Power. Things like 19-inch alloy wheels, full LED lighting around the car. There's proximity, keyless entry and walk-away locking, which is fantastic. There's push-button start. You get a 12.3-inch driver info screen, a 12.3-inch touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's a big panoramic glass roof, dual-zone climate control, some really lovely interior trim finishes, and it does feel pretty special for the money. But if you want a few extras, well, you might want to shop up to this one here, which is the N Design top spec model. It's about $54,000 plus on-road costs, so it could be pushing your budget, but hey, you're getting things like these beautiful 20-inch alloy wheels. You've got body-colored bumpers all around the body of the vehicle, and it looks fantastic in my opinion. On the inside, you're getting a few differences as well, including black Alcantara with leather accented seat trim and a black Alcantara finish on the dash and some other elements. And as well as that, there's a 10.8-inch head-up display, which you get on the TIL version and this one as well. So do you think it's worth the kind of money that's being asked here, or would you be going shopping for something a little cheaper? I've got a couple of cheaper options and one that's maybe a bit more expensive. Okay, let's talk about some alternatives to the Qashqai e-Power. If you're thinking small hybrid SUV is what you are looking for, I thoroughly recommend you go and take a look at the Toyota Corolla Cross. It is a brilliant little SUV with plenty of space and practicality, plenty of power, amazing fuel efficiency, and although the prices are maybe a little bit steep for some versions, if you can deal with a little bit less stuff, the entry-level grades do make a lot of sense. It's a brilliant vehicle, and I really like that Toyota Corolla Cross. Otherwise, you might want to go and check out the Hyundai Kona Hybrid. It's another great choice. It does have a few annoying safety features that you might have to get used to, or maybe you just won't like the car because of them, but it does have a really good amount of space, practicality, thoughtfulness, and spec as well for the money that's being asked. And there are several different versions of that Kona Hybrid available, so it might suit your budget. But if your budget is, well, at this level, in the 50s, maybe even a little bit more, and you want something that's definitely going to stand out in terms of the style, maybe go and have a look at the Peugeot 3008 Hybrid. My review of it is live now, and I bloody loved it. I thought it was a really great drive. It's a mild hybrid 3-cylinder engine, and it really does offer ease of use and ease of livability. It's great to drive and it looks fantastic too. It's just whether you can stomach the idea of potential resale losses on that car. But if you love it, maybe live a little and buy it. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. The Qashqai really is in the sweet spot when it comes to small SUVs. It's about 4.4 meters long. You'll see all the dimensions that you need to know on your screen. And even these e-Power models, well, they do have some differences compared to the other versions in the lineup. This particular one here is the top spec version, which is called N Design, and it does have more color-coded bits than the other models. It's also got a slightly different grille finish. It looks fantastic in my eye, but you tell me what you think. It's got 20-inch alloy wheels, as I said, and it looks really striking in person. You'll see that it's got color-coded sections all around the bottom of the vehicle and at the back as well. But there are some things you need to consider when it comes to the rear end, and I'm not talking about those tail lights, which you can have your say on in the comments, but let's have a look at the boot space and consider what's going on here. So this one, electric tailgate, and you will see here that there is a bit of a strange thing going on with this boot. It's got an intrusion right there, but it's also got a smaller boot than the other e-Power version. So the TIL has a bigger boot because it doesn't have a spare wheel, whereas this car, the N design, does come with an 18-inch spare wheel. So that is peculiar, but it might actually be a decision maker for you. I know there are plenty of people out there who insist upon a spare. Now, you've also got some shopping bag hooks, that weird intrusion, as I said, and you've also got more shopping bag hooks and a 12-volt port over there, and a light underneath, and a light underneath there too. So you can see for yourself that there is some considerations when it comes to sizing this vehicle up for your needs. Okay, so this is your point of view perspective of the interior of this new Qashqai e-Power. It hasn't really changed all that much compared to the previous one. That's no big deal in my opinion, because it still looks and feels pretty plush and pretty high-end, and it should for this kind of money in my opinion. Now, this one does have some Alcantara finishing across the dashboard. You've also got it on the doors, down here on the knee pads, but it already looks a little bit dirty, and this is a brand new car, so it might not suit everyone's needs, especially if you're a family runner. And you've also got these leather and Alcantara trimmed seats. It's a nice finish. They're comfortable, except this one is still manually adjustable only. You get electric seat adjustment for the driver's seat, but there's also memory settings for this driver's seat. I think it's a comfy spot to sit, and you can get into a pretty good position, but if you like to sit low, you might find that you do feel like you're sitting up a little bit high on a stool. Now, in front, you've got a pair of 12.3-inch screens. So the 12.3-inch touchscreen media system, it has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's also got a surround view camera system as standard, which is really handy. And there's plenty of other features like sat-nav as well. It's certainly not the most high-tech looking screen, and it's not the most feature-packed, but that means it's bloody simple to get your head around. And so are the controls here. So you've got a volume dial, you've got a couple of controls there as well, and down below there's a dedicated climate panel, which who would have thought that is now a perk to have climate dials so you can adjust the temperature. If it is a little bit noisy, I'm sorry, it's 35 degrees outside. We're going aircon today, and you do have very easily adjustable vents. Again, who would have thought that'd be a perk? There's a heated steering wheel if you want it or need it. You've got heated seats. I won't be turning that on, but you do have no ventilated seats, which is maybe a little bit of a disappointment. Down below, there's a wireless phone charger right there. You've got your starter button there, and here you'll find your very interesting looking central control area. So a bit of a weird looking shifter. You can put it into B mode if you want to get the most out of the powertrain. There's also a drive mode selector there, but these two buttons here are probably the most important ones. EV will run for a couple of kilometers, hopefully, and then you've got your e-pedal mode, so you can drive it using just the throttle if you want to. For the most part, you will still need to use the brakes if you want to come to a complete stop. You've got an electronic park brake there as well, an auto hold button if you don't want it to creep forward in traffic. And again, you've got another 12.3-inch screen in front of the driver. It's got plenty of info on it and plenty of usability to it. I actually think this is a really nice feature, this screen, and if you want to turn off some of the safety systems, it's not too hard to do so, although they aren't too intrusive in this vehicle, which I like. Now, you might also be able to see here, there is a head-up display, and that's standard on both the e-Power versions of the Qashqai. And let's have a look above. There are some illuminated vanity mirrors. Yep, a little light up there when you open that shade. You've got an auto-dimming rear vision mirror, and yes, you do get a big panoramic glass roof as well in this grade. So that's lovely. It looks fantastic. It adds to the airiness because it is a dark cabin otherwise. As you can see, it's got the dark headliner finish too. So it's practical. It's got your bottle holders in the doors. You've got some cup holders down here. There's a center console area with some USB-C ports as well. And it does have most of the things that you would want covered when it comes to the design and practicality. So let's check out the backseat space. This seat is set for my driving position. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall. You can see I've got enough foot room to wiggle my big size 12s underneath that seat and enough knee room to sit pretty comfortably back here. And in terms of headroom, yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if you were 6'6", you might struggle, but someone my height, if you've got tall teens, they might be perfectly fine. There's other great features back here. You get grab handles, you get lights up here as well, and that's a nice inclusion, and they are touch sensitive as well. Down here, you've got some extra good features. Directional air vents, couple of USB-C ports, you've got map pockets on the seat backs, bottle holders in the doors, and of course you've got ISOFIX points and 3 top tethers as well, and a flip down armrest with your cup holders there. They are a little shallow, so just be careful. If you put a very, very full, large drink in there, it might topple out, and that won't be comfortable for anyone. So, mostly very, very good in terms of the backseat experience. Comfy seat too. The Qashqai e-Power uses a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, which has got a fair amount of grunt in its own right, but it never powers the front wheels directly. Instead, it goes through an inverter to an electric motor and basically offers up a decent amount of grunt to the front tyres. There is no gearbox, it uses a reduction gear transmission, and the combined outputs are pretty generous. 140 kilowatts, 330 newton meters, all going through the front tyres. So you need to keep that in mind, and also keep in mind the towing capacity, which you'll see on your screen now. Right, let's go drive it, hey? Okay, so let's talk about the drive experience in this e-Power version of the Qashqai. It's different to the petrol models in mostly good ways, and I do like the way that this powertrain behaves. So if you're not familiar, e-Power basically uses an electric motor to drive the wheels, but it's topped up in most instances by the petrol engine, but you can also use regenerative braking to help top up that battery pack as well. And there's an e-pedal driving mode too. So if you hit that button, it will basically adjust the braking so it's a more assertive regen brake, and you can just take your foot off the accelerator and it will come to a walking pace. Not quite a full stop, but walking pace, and it's pretty easy to get used to that e-pedal mode. What isn't as easy to get used to is the feeling of the actual brake pedal. It takes a bit of learning and a bit of getting used to, because it is quite strange, like wooden feeling underneath your foot, and then it starts to bite really quickly. And also the throttle response is quite assertive too. So when you take off from a standstill, it really does sort of jolt you away from a stop. But generally, once you are up and moving, it's very easy to drive this car using just the throttle. Really, you don't need to even touch the brakes in a lot of situations, and I like that about it. It really does make it feel a bit more like an EV to drive. Another big benefit of this powertrain is that it's not noisy. You can hear the petrol engine sometimes kick in and doing its thing as a generator, and it's not too loud. It's actually pretty quiet, and it really does feel at this sort of speed, 80 k's an hour, that you are almost driving an electric car. It's quite serene in that way, and apart from some road noise intrusion, which is not too bad, and maybe some bings and bongs that can get on your nerves, I think it's a perfectly fine drive experience. But also, I'll call out the fact that compared to the petrol models, which I've also driven today, the experience from the handling and the steering perspective is better in the e-Power. It's a bit heavier, and it does feel a bit more planted on the road surface. Like in the petrol ones, the rear end felt a little bit too bouncy, whereas in this car, it seems to settle down a bit more. And the steering, while it's a bit artificially heavy and over responsive, it does feel nimble when you do change directions, or if you're in town dealing with roundabouts and traffic lights and intersections. It's relatively trustworthy. It's not necessarily the most joyful car to drive, but it does feel pretty responsive and pretty reactive to your inputs. So look, I think that for most people who are considering a Nissan Qashqai, you probably don't need to go for the e-Power, but if you are looking for an electrified drive experience, but one that you don't have to worry about plugging in at night to keep it topped up, well, it could be a really good choice. But what about fuel consumption? Let's talk about that now. The official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the e-Power model is 4.8 litres per 100 Ks. Certainly not mind-blowingly low fuel consumption. Yes, you still have to fill it up with petrol. You'll see the fuel requirement on your screen now that engine requires. And if you're wondering about the fuel tank capacity, well, that figure is on your screen now as well. So in theory, you should be able to get a decent amount of driving out of one of these cars between fill-ups, but If you're wondering what I've seen across this drive today, which has included lots and lots of country road driving, some urban stop-start stuff, yeah, just on 6 litres per 100 or thereabouts. So not game-changing in terms of the actual fuel consumption, but you might see better if you do a lot of stop-start stuff and you use that e-pedal mode all the time. The Nissan Qashqai achieved the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating in 2021, and it still has that high score, and you're getting everything that's possible to have in the high-grade versions of this Qashqai. So both e-Power versions get things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection, there's adaptive cruise control, there's lane keeping and emergency lane keeping, there's blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, there's front and rear parking sensors, a surround view camera system and traffic sign recognition. And it's not too annoying when it comes to the safety stuff, so it's one of those ones that you can live with easily without having to turn anything off unless you're very easily annoyed, like me. And there's also 7 airbags fitted to this car: dual front, front side, full length curtain, and a front center airbag to prevent head clashes in the event of a side impact. So safety stuff, yep, good. In case you missed the news, Nissan Australia now offers a 10-year, 300,000 kilometre warranty, but it is conditional on you servicing your car with the brand. So if you don't, you still get a 5-year warranty, but if you decide to service with Nissan, it can keep going up to 10 years or 300,000 kilometres, whichever occurs first, and that is generous in my mind. But yes, you do have to service with Nissan. The first 5 services are capped at $400 per visit, or $399 if you want to be nitpicky. That is pretty decent value in terms of the servicing costs. And if you do service with Nissan, you also get your roadside assistance topped up each year, up to 10 years maximum. So all of that stacks up pretty well, and it could be part of the reason that you would consider this now when you might not have considered it before, in my opinion. Should you buy a Nissan Qashqai e-Power? I think if you can spend the money and you really like it, then why not? Because there's not much to say that this isn't going to be an enjoyable thing to own, and with the 10-year warranty, conditional, it might actually be a really easy ownership experience, easier than maybe trying to find a charger when you run out of juice because, well, you can just go to the servo. But is it really a good stepping stone to electrified life? You tell me what you think in the comments section below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell. It does help a lot, and I'll see you when I see you.